were now fully aligned with the Republican Party. And so to be able to deliver that speech in Spanish and pushing against the narrative that Hispanics only vote Democrat, that Hispanics are woke and believe in this woke socialism philosophy.
We're not wired left.
That we are not wired left. Yeah. In fact, we are against socialism. We have seen in our families that still live in Latin America what socialism and what communism does to countries, what it does to families. We don't want any part of that. If we don't save the United States of America, families like ours that came from Mexico, that came from Venezuela, that come from Chile and other countries that have suffered through socialism or through communism, if they cannot go to America, where do they go?
Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential. Welcome to American Potential Podcast. I'm your guest host, Daniel Garza, and I'm thrilled today to have Congresswoman Mónica De La Cruz with us. It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. You know, LIBRE actually started in your district in the 15th, and we want to thank you for your support since the day of our launch, really, and up until today. You've been just a valuable partner in our effort.
Yes, absolutely. Well, first, it's an honor to be here with you today, and I'm humbled to represent South Texas and humbled that you guys started in my district. In fact, it was your hard work along with your teams that made my role a reality. I am the first Hispanic female Republican to serve a full term for the great state of Texas.
That's amazing.
And LIBRE had an important part of that.
Yeah, no, well, thank you so much for that recognition. You're right. It has had to do with a lot of hard work and personal time and sacrifices of volunteers and activists across the Rio Grande Valley, where you've really seen a shift in la mentalidad of Latinos across the country, but more so in the Rio Grande Valley. I think you've had a lot to do with that. You're being very humble. But Congresswoman, you are currently in your second term already in office. And before that, you were a small business owner. Can you start off by sharing a little bit about your personal story and really what made you want to run for office in the first place?
Well, like many in the Rio Grande Valley, I come from simple, humble beginnings. My grandfather was a Mexican farm worker. He picked melones, and to this day, melon, watermelon, they're my favorites. My grandfather served in the United States Navy in World War II. So I have a family with deep roots that are the fabric of South Texas, the fabric of America, like many in South Texas.
Yes.
But what I can say is this, is serving our country as my grandfather did, my brother serving in the United States Air Force for 20 years. We love this country. It was my grandfather who was on his knees in the hot summer heat in South Texas, picking melones, who is the most proud to be an American. And because of their hard work, I started a small business, a successful insurance business, and never thought about politics.
Yeah.
But we see, as you mentioned, a shift in the Rio Grande Valley, a shift that align hardworking blue-collar Hispanics to the Republican Party. The Republican Party has now become the party of hardworking Americans. Blue-collar Americans that want to live the American dream, but also want that American dream to be available for their family and for their kids.
Absolutely. I think it's no small thing to say that, when you talk about blue-collar, working class, right, that Blacks and Latinos make up 45% of America's working class. And I think that's, who is being impacted really by things like the Big Beautiful Bill and these kind of things. Now, in full disclosure, I got to say, I'm your constituent. I actually live in your district.
I love that.
And so I was, very proud of that. And one of the things that makes me proud is that I think the Rio Grande Valley sort of punches above its weight when it comes to national news and the kind of figures that come out of there. In 2024, you got to deliver the Spanish response to the State of the Union address delivered by President Biden in his final year. What did that opportunity mean to you in South Texas?
To this day, it brings such great emotion because it was the opportunity to have South Texas on the national stage, being able to deliver the message that Hispanic voices matter, that we matter, our beliefs matter. And as you said, having such a large group, working class Hispanics, had now shifted towards the Republican Party. I call it the Great Awakening for Hispanics, where we realize that our values of faith, of freedom, of familia, were now fully aligned with the Republican Party. And so to be able to deliver that speech in Spanish and pushing against the narrative that Hispanics only vote Democrat, that Hispanics are woke and believe in this woke socialism philosophy.
We're not wired left.
That we are not wired left. Yeah. In fact, we are against socialism. We have seen in our families that still live in Latin America what socialism and what communism does to countries, what it does to families. We don't want any part of that.
Yeah.
If we don't save the United States of America, families like ours that came from Mexico, that came from Venezuela, that come from Chile and other countries that have suffered through socialism or through communism, if they cannot go to America, where do they go?
I love that you say that about America, because America is an idea, right? It's about principles, tried and true American principles that are enshrined in our Constitution and our founding charters. So I would hope that the shift isn't so much partisan as much as it is about a trend towards principles. That maybe one party is doing a better job of defending, and maybe that's why they're getting a better response. In the speech that you gave right after that State of the Union, you talked about the economy, border security, and fighting for the American dream. In what ways have you seen progress in those policy areas that really impact the lives of individual Latinos? Because, we're not a block. We're 65 million individuals, right, with different challenges, different economic levels, educational levels, and we're impacted different. So how have you seen any progress since that speech?
Well, I've seen a lot of progress, especially since the Trump administration has taken over the White House. Everything from unleashing American energy in our district, but in the state of Texas, energy is very important.
100%.
And as you mentioned, we have lots of hardworking South Texas men and women, some of them who have low education, but want that opportunity to be able to have financial security.
Yes.
And energy industry brings those high-paying jobs to gente like ours in South Texas. So by being able to support the energy industry, gas-powered vehicles provides jobs, provides opportunities, and families to be able to elevate themselves. So we see in the jobs report that has just come out an increase in jobs, an increase in enthusiasm, not only for the economy, but for the security of our nation.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, under the last administration, we saw millions of illegal immigrants cross through our border. Our area in Deep South Texas has a wonderful relationship with our Border Patrol and Custom officers. And what we've seen under the Trump administration is enforcement of rules. And what that has led to is safer communities throughout all of the United States.
I think those ICE agents and those Border Patrol agents are real heroes on the front line, who have been securing our border, right, and keeping out those who would do harm to Americans. I don't think President Trump gets enough credit for the dramatic turnaround that we've seen at the border, and obviously the lack of vetting that we saw during the Biden administration was also a deep concern. Following the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, Latinos saw record growth in economic opportunity right after that. It was just amazing in labor participation, low unemployment, wage growth, these kind of things, home ownership, by the way. Throughout most of President Trump's first presidency, Latinos were the top job creators and business starters. Recently, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act was passed thanks to you in the efforts of folks like yourself. In what ways does the bill grow the economy, unleash the private sector, and how will it help everyday families?
Now, it shouldn't surprise any of us that Hispanics led the efforts in 2017 for job growth and opportunity. Latinos are hardworking people, right? And we're going to take the opportunities when they come. We saw that in 2017. And that's why I was very proud to cast my vote in support of the One Big Beautiful Bill. Because number one, it stopped the largest tax hike that would have happened in the history of the United States. And who would that have affected? Latinos, Hispanics. So we stopped that from happening. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, senior benefits. And when I think about no tax on overtime, I think about all those hardworking single moms, those hardworking fathers, families that are working not only 9-to-5 jobs Monday through Friday, but on the weekend to earn a little bit of extra dinero for Christmas, for a birthday party, for vacation. No taxes on overtime. Isn't that wonderful that we're able to support hardworking middle class?
You're rewarded for your labor, right? It's like, what a concept.
Yes.
Let me preface this question first by saying there's a principle that just because you're for border enforcement doesn't mean you're against immigrants. And just because you're for immigrants doesn't mean you're against border enforcement, right? Recently, you introduced a new bill, the Braseto 2.0 Act. For many Latinos and many Mexican Americans in the Braseto program back when, offered dignity to work, right? Opportunity in America. Can you explain what your bill does and how you're trying to fix really an important part of our immigration system?
What I see in South Texas is what an important role that immigrants give to our community. And when you talk about dignity, I love that word dignity because it aligns with the Braseto program 2.0. It is giving dignity to the workers through number one, stabilizing wages, that they have the certainty of how much they're going to make. Number two, it also allows for stability for our farmers and ranchers to know that they're going to have the workforce available to pick those crops. And at the end of the day, food security is national security. We need to make sure that our farms can keep doing their business with the immigrants that want the opportunity for their family and opportunity to have stable wages. Not only am I proud to present this piece of legislation, but the Braseto program was a strong piece of legislation back in the 1950s and 60s that helped America in its time of need. And what better time than right now when we need immigrants to help us once again fulfill those important roles of helping our farming community.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. Now, you have the pleasure, loosely, but of being on both the financial services and agricultural committees that sometimes aren't on the limelight, right? But are very, very critical and important to America. What issues do you get to work on in those committees, and how do they impact everyday Americans?
Well, I love both committees, financial services, because it supports community banks. That is important for Hispanic communities like mine. I always tell the story about myself that my mother started as a secretary at DHS. She was a single mom, struggling to make ends meet, never owned a business in her life. And here's her daughter who wants to start a business. It was because of the relationship that I was able to create over many years with a small community banker that took the initiative to say, I know you, Monica, as a person, and I believe that you will pay back this loan that you're taking for your small business that led me on to be able to do great things within my business. So in financial services, I'm able to help support our community businesses. Number two, housing is something critical for our area. So making sure that there are safe, affordable homes available for communities like mine that is over 80% Hispanic is something I'm passionate about, legislation that I get to work on. And number two, on Ag Committee. Well, ag plays an important role in Deep South Texas, where we have farming and ranching as one of our top industries. So in the ag space, I was able to secure water from the 1944 water treaty and help our local farmers. Huge. Saved our farming community, saved our citrus industry, and saved our municipalities who were on the brink of closing the water valves.
Yes.
And it was a very difficult time, but we're getting water from Mexico. And I was able to get over $280 million for our farmers in South Texas to help them overcome the devastation that they had already endured by the 1944 water treaty.
That's terrific. Well, water is life, right? As they say, and without it, I don't know what we'd have. I've found it fascinating that, out of the 15th district in South Texas, a district, by the way, that was controlled by Democrats since Teddy Roosevelt. you were able far too long. Yeah. Well, you were able to flip that district in a 90% Latino district, right?
Yes.
And which tells me that something's happening with Latinos across the country. Just as a political observation, it's estimated that over 17 million Latinos voted in the 2024 election. Gave you the re-election, by the way. However, many Latinos stayed home and didn't participate or feel that their vote doesn't count. What do you say to voters, that didn't participate in the election, and what role do grassroots play in this?
Well, number one, I call it the Great Awakening. I think that Latinos are more educated. They are paying attention.
Yeah.
And when they saw the shift from the Trump administration to the Biden administration, where Hispanic owned businesses were now closing, we weren't growing at the rapid rate that we did under the Trump administration. And what Latinos want is Hispanics want the opportunity for greatness, opportunity to achieve the American dream. They don't expect equality. If they wanted equality in their opportunity, they would go to socialists and start voting socialists, right? But what they want is the opportunity for the American dream.
So equal opportunity.
And so the equal opportunity for the American dream. That being said, I think that more Hispanics will be voting as they see the successes of the One Big Beautiful Bill of the Trump administration. And I believe that as Hispanics from Brownsville to Laredo are looking at me as the first Republican to serve in that area, what they're seeing is common sense legislation. They're seeing a person who is practical in what they're saying. They're seeing hard work. They are seeing community, federal funds coming into their community that they had never seen before. And I think in the next election, they're going to say, I want more of that. And that's why we're going to see Texas 34 flip, and we're going to see Texas 28 flip. And it's going to be because of our grassroots efforts like the ones that we have with LIBRE.
And the civic involvement of Latinos across the RGV, which we're, of course, trying to increase and help to engage more Latinos, especially on policy. As far as we're concerned, the end game is not the politics. The end game is really the policy and how it impacts everyday Americans. And thank you for being a champion. Thank you for being a supporter on our behalf. Thank you, Congresswoman Monica De La Cruz.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.